Hari Om. Let's start. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinabadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It's very important that you read along with these classes. If this is simply a one-sided dictation of this book, I mean, it's nice. It'll be good to know all these things. But if it's only a one-sided dictation from my end, chances are you won't be able to make the most of studying a book like this. So I would highly, highly encourage that. I mean, just for example, I think I personally have read this chapter, Exigency of Action, maybe 50 times in my life. Not exaggerating. And the beauty of this book that we're studying together is that on plain sight, it might seem very simple. Might seem very simple. These concepts are very easily explained, expressed in simple terms and simple themes, very logically. But they have a lot of stuff packed in them. And it's very important that you read and reread and read. Not mechanically. I'm not saying every day just mechanically read. But read it with a little more depth than you would read any other book. But do read. Do read. I often have people tell me, because this is the same thing I experienced. The first time I read this book, I read it in 3 days. The first time I read this entire book, which we've been studying for the last 3 months, I read it in 3 days. The second time, it took me a long time. And thereafter, I never dared to read the whole book at one go. Page by page, theme by theme, chapter by chapter. So this is a good opportunity. We're going at a slow pace. It's a good opportunity to read the book slowly, patiently while we study it. And in order to, I'm just going to change things up from next class in order to promote your questions, in order to promote your. See, there are several ways in which people ask questions. And the way we do it currently, it's generally people having a reaction to what they have heard in the last 1 hour. What you have heard in the last 1 hour, okay, something sticks in your head, and then you ask me towards the end of class. That's one level of question, and it's important. Even more important is a question that comes after contemplation. See, this is a question that comes before contemplation, only after listening. A question that comes after shravana, after listening. More important and more deep is a question that comes after manana, after contemplation. That kind of question is when you are carefully, we've been reading this book, we've been highlighting certain sections only with an intent to make you pause and think about them. When you read this book at your own pace, at your own time, outside, you're literally dictating to yourself. Perhaps you will come across certain thoughts and queries. You can compare that with maybe some notes you're taking in this class. And there's bound to be either clarifications, there's bound to be a need for elaboration, you know, on what we have discussed. Because otherwise it'll just be a very one-sided, one-directed, and we'll move through this text very fast. Right? So use the opportunity. So from next class, what I'll do is at the beginning of class, I'll pause for questions to see if anybody among you who essentially I want you to come a little prepared. When I say prepared, a little revised with what we are studying, what we have been studying, and it should be fresh in your minds, right? You should already have been thinking about it, perhaps from the day before or something like that. Not with the intention to test you necessarily, but with the intention that you make the most of a text like this. So, exigency of action. Trust me, this is one chapter. It seems very simple. It's a drop in the ocean. It's like it's a beautiful way of summarizing chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita. But there's a lot packed in there, and the beauty is, if you want to understand thoughts sequentially, if you want to understand these concepts logically in a sequence, it's a great way of studying the whole theory of action, theory of karma yoga. It's a great introduction. So I'm going to quickly summarize what we have done in chapter 5, because it's a very heavy chapter, and yes, we have paced through it, we have rushed through it, but I want to give you the opportunity to come back to it and ask questions about it. So first of all, action is inevitable. At no point does Vedanta or spirituality in general advocate giving up action. Understanding the inevitability of action is very, very important. It is something that you cannot control. So you must perform action. Spirituality is not about running away from action. Rather, it is about performing right action. It is taking the bull by the horns. So action is inevitable. The entire purpose of spiritual knowledge is to inculcate the right approach, the right attitude in action. So what is the value of action? Action well performed, first of all, is the joy of life. We've lost joy in life because we've taken it away from action. We think joy, we think happiness is in getting away from action, in enjoying its results, in enjoying the time away from what we do. We correlate enjoyment with a vacation, enjoyment with something that is done outside work. But the beauty of action is that it itself is most rewarding. The happiest people are those who are in sync with what they are doing. This is not spirituality. You can look around you. People who are enthused, regardless of how much they are earning, regardless about necessarily how big they've made it. Of course, there's a thrill to earning good amount of money. There's a thrill to achieving success. But deeper and greater than that thrill is the joy of doing what you are aligned with, what you value. Hmm? So the value of action is that it itself is most rewarding, and action done in that right spirit brings about that joy, that happiness. When you look at the world from a spirit of service, when you look at the world from the spirit of repayment, then you become enthused to perform action in that spirit. So, what is the chronology of action? Jumping into how does action come about? All action comes about from your desires. All desires are nothing but a manifestation of thought. Thought comes from vasanas. So your actions that you perform are essentially a result of your vasanas. Your vasanas prompt your actions. So understanding your vasanas, understanding your nature, you must align yourself to a field of action that speaks to your vasanas. It's called the swadharma. An action aligned with your vasanas is your swadharma, something that comes naturally to you, something that engages you. The first step in performing right action is picking up your swadharma, and thereafter inculcating the spirit of renunciation in action. It's not renunciation of the action. Having taken up the swadharmic field of activity, having found a way to express your swadharma, you must take up the spirit of renunciation. No kartritva, no bhoktritva. What you enjoy through your actions only mislead you, distract you, he says in this section. The spirit of renunciation. For those of you looking for a beautiful definition, comes from chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. Verse 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti sasannyasi cha yogi cha. One who does his obligatory duty, whatever he ought to do, whatever his roles and responsibilities are in life, without craving for the result, without attachment to the action, with no axe to grind. So the whole spirit of right action is in renunciation. We are not asking, you see, people have the natural question, if I lose my ego in action, if I lose the thrill of action, if I lose the thought of the result, how will I be enthused? Absolutely. As we discussed in a little detail in this section, rising from tamas to rajas requires you to look at the result, requires you to be enthused by what you're going to enjoy as a consequence of this. But we're asking you to lift yourself from rajas to sattva. You have to change yourself, your approach from incentive to initiative. Hmm? Most of the excitement and the passion we feel is through incentive, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's very important to start to prompt action, that we use whatever inspires it. So incentive is the first step of inspiring action. If you find yourself or you find someone else not interested in something, lackadaisical, you ought to introduce an incentive. But having introduced an incentive, and once a person is enthused in the action, it has to shift from incentive to initiative, from result to purpose. So that theme was covered in renunciation of action, and a way to formalize that theme, he brings it down to the three types of action. Essentially, all actions you perform can be broken up into selfish, unselfish, and selfless. A selfish action is action performed to fulfill a selfish desire. An unselfish action is an action performed to fulfill an unselfish desire. Very basic definition. Please understand this. What makes an action selfish? It's not about the action per se, it's about what kind of desire you're trying to fulfill. The same action can be selfish, the same action can be unselfish, depending on what's your motive. What's your motive? Generally, it's a mix. Huh? If you look at yourself, see, nobody's entirely selfish, nobody's entirely unselfish. We're all kamsi kamsa. Little bit here, little bit there. What you need to work on is reduce the proportion of selfish, increase the proportion of unselfish. That's about it. See, a selfish person can't become unselfish overnight. They'll be confused, frustrated. So the so it's very important that we understand this fundamental definition. What's your motive? And we have multiple motives. All we're saying is highlight the unselfish, let the selfish motive simply let it pass. Remember that example of the garden. We have all sorts of seeds in us, and all of them are sprouting. What do we choose to water? What do we choose to promote? What do we choose to allow to flourish? So promote the unselfish motives in you. Allow the selfish motives to be. Let them die their natural death. You don't have to fight your selfishness. You have to pick up unselfishness. That's the beauty. And ultimately, beyond selfish and unselfish lies selfless action. A little more difficult to understand. But there is the further refinement of unselfishness is selflessness, where there is no self, there is no I in the action, there is no ahankara. And we use the example of nature because the example of nature is so abundant. Remember the quote we used last time from Hafiz? Anybody remember that quote? Anybody remember Hafiz's quote, which we used in the end of class last time?
Yes, yes, yes. It's even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me."
Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole world. Selflessness lights up the whole world. See, this concept is beautifully explained in about 5-6 verses in the Bhagavad Gita. If you go back to chapter 3, for those of you who've studied the Bhagavad Gita, go back to chapter 3. I know some people out here love chapter 3. Yeah, sure, I'm looking at you. Go back to chapter 3. See, one thing is to understand this knowledge theoretically, which is very important. Which is very important. We must understand these concepts and the theory behind them so that we can reason with ourselves. Thereafter is the practical application of this knowledge, step by step. And where you have to begin is karma. You have to begin with chapter 3. I often have people asking questions like, how do you eliminate vasanas? Recently in our group, someone had asked, a gentleman had asked, how do you stop the creation of new vasanas? Start with karma. You have to. You have to start with the fundamentals. So in chapter 3, verse number 9 onwards. Let me see if I can pull it up. What I was thinking of is from 10 onwards, but anyway, 9 is also important. Verse number 9 onwards. This is chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, which you have in your screen. He says, this world is bound by action other than those performed for the sake of yajna. Anyway, I don't want to get into this concept. It's confused. I don't want to digress. This verse onwards, verse number 10 onwards, he says, the creator, whoever the creator is, Prajapati, the creator having in the beginning created mankind together with Yajna, said, by this shall you propagate. Let this be the milch cow of your desired objects. He says, whoever the creator is, and I'm not going into detail about this, the creator has created mankind along with Yajna. Yajna means karma yoga in this context. Yajna means what we have been talking about, the spirit of renunciation in action. Yajna means performing action with the right attitude. What we have introduced, these concepts which we have introduced. See, yajna, we've all performed yajnas. Havan, everyone has performed a havan in their life, been part of a havan. Especially when something new is starting, we perform a havan. And we have all sorts of funny ideas. Oh, the havan will purify something. The havan is meant to purify your mind, nothing else. If the havan doesn't purify your mind, it doesn't matter what else it purifies. The purpose of a havan, a yajna, is to purify your mind. So havan is another word for yajna. Yajna, what happens? There's a fire. First of all, there's a havan kunda, there's a trough. And in that havan kunda, there's a fire. And everybody comes to the yajna. And traditionally what happens is everybody brings their own samagri. You know what samagri is? Samagri is the contribution, what you offer into the fire. Some people will bring hundreds of kilos, some people will bring 1 kilo, some people will bring, according to your contribution, according to your capacity. So you come into a yajna with your, and then it's all mixed up, and all the contribution is mixed up to offer into the fire. And then everybody participates in this yajna, offering samagri into the fire. And very interesting, I don't know if you'll do havan. There's a way to offer the samagri. You only use these two fingers. You don't use this one. You're not supposed to use this finger. If all of you have been offering samagri like this, you've been doing it wrong. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. You're thinking, oh God, I have to do that yajna again now. Don't worry. Remember this. This is only symbolic, and you should follow these symbolisms. This finger represents your ego, your ahankara. When you're doing any action, you must do the action with a sense of contribution, with a sense of ahankara. That's why when you're offering, you offer with these two fingers. These two fingers represent your mind and your buddhi, your man and your buddhi. You must do it with a pure mind and a clear buddhi, not with ahankara. So that's why in the yajna you don't use this finger. And then when the fire you perform, you offer the ahuti, and then the fire blazes, and everybody is meant to worship swaha. You're meant to worship the fire that grows and glows with your contribution, with your offering. This process is symbolic. The Havan Kunda represents your field of action. There are hundreds of fields of action. Everything is a field of action. Your house is a field of action. Your business is a field of action. Your society is a field of action. Any relationship is a field of action. But for simplicity's sake, any field of activity, your house or your business or whatever. And in that, there's a deity to be worshipped. There's a deity to be worshipped. Now, the deity represents the goal. The deity represents the ideal. In an organization, the ideal could be the welfare of all the employees. the welfare of all the customers, the welfare of the nation. Hmm? Whatever ideal you pitch up for the company. In the family, the ideal could be welfare of the family, making yourself. Uh, the grossest ideal is our own material success. Hmm. What's the grossest goal for a family? Our own success. A slightly subtler ideal is, or a better ideal is, uh, welfare of our community. But it's fundamentally different. One goal is me, mine, for me. The other goal is let us be instruments of welfare of others, well-being. So there could be multiple levels of ideals, but that fire represents that ideal, uh, that thought which you have envisioned for this group, for this collective. And everybody comes and offers into offers the ahuti. So their ahuti, their whatever samagri they bring is symbolic of their contribution. Meaning, in any action, in any Havan Kund, in any field of activity, there are multiple people that contribute to it. It's not just one person. No action is possible with just one person. It's always a collective, directly or indirectly. Directly or indirectly. What I mean is either directly multiple people are contributing, but even say for example like in writing this book, Swamiji, it's an action performed by Swamiji. So you'll say, oh, Swamiji is the doer of this yajna. No, so many people have contributed to his capacity to write this book. So many people indirectly have contributed to this, what you're reading in front of you. People who have taught him the language, people who have taught him the subject, people who have nourished him. So in whatever action you do, either there is a direct contribution of others or there's an indirect contribution of others. But there is a contribution of others. And you have to be cognizant of that. You are not the doer. You are not the doer. You're simply standing on the shoulders of hundreds of people. Hmm? So that's symbolized by everyone bringing in their ahuti, and it's all being mixed up. Nobody's saying, "Oh, this person bought this much, that person bought that much." Huh? This thing was donated by such a great person. No, there's no name. It's all mixed up. Meaning, it doesn't matter who all have contributed. The idea is others have contributed. So don't be mindful of your contribution also. So it's all mixed up, and then you offer. And you offer to that fire means you perform the action in that field of activity in the spirit of service, with the spirit of offering, without the ego. And naturally, what will happen? The fire will blaze. There'll be success, there'll be a result, and you bow to that result. You bow to that result with the spirit of prasad bhav. Prasad bhav means whatever comes from it, I accept the result. I may have put in a lot of effort, but sometimes the result may not work in my favor. Have the humility to accept that result. And sometimes the result might be great. Enjoy the result with a prasad bhav, as a gift, not with the thought of, I have brought about the result, I have brought about the success. No. There are so many factors beyond your own contribution that lead to a result. So you bow to that blazing fire. Without the fire, nothing could have been possible. There are so many factors beyond your own action that determine the result of the action. You might do everything right. You might do everything right. Hmm? Unforeseen circumstances. So for any result to work, you need the not only the collaboration of others, but the benevolence of nature. You need everything to work in your favor. Because things work mota moti correctly, we take nature for granted. We take our environment for granted. But anything can go wrong at any point. Things have to function meticulously, starting with your own body. Huh? You take your own body for granted. But for your body to function right now, sitting right now, as we are, hundreds and millions of things have to work properly. And a small issue, a small problem, undetected, your respiratory system has to work properly, your circulatory system has to work properly, your nervous system has to work properly, your digestive system has to work properly. And sometimes, for no fault of your own, things may go wrong. So, whatever results come, accept it with an attitude of gratitude. There are so many forces working beyond your own contribution that determine the result of any action. So this is a yajna. Huh? So in chapter 3, I'm coming back to what we are discussing. In chapter 3 it says, the creator having created mankind together with yajna. And he says, by what? By this yajna you shall propagate. Means you shall flourish. Let this be the milch cow. Milch cow, the word used out here is kamadhuk. Let this be the milch cow. Milch cow, anybody knows what we're talking about? What's kamdhuk? Kamadhenu. Not the ghee brand. Huh? Kamdhenu ghee. What is kamdhenu?
It's the cow. It's about that cow gives milk. The baby has little, the rest goes to everybody. Like it's given to all. Is that?
Kamdhenu. Anybody knows kamdhenu?
कामधेनु एक गाय थी जो कि समुद्र मंथन में निकली थी,
Correct.
जो मतलब
Yeah.
हर इच्छा को पूरी करने वाली गाय थी.
हर इच्छा को पूरी करने वाली गाय, जो भी मांगो.
Should be.
Kam means desire, the fulfiller of your desire. काश मुझे ऐसी गाय मिल जाए. हाँ? ऐसी गाय है कि नहीं है मालूम नहीं, उसके लिए हमें समुद्र मंथन में जाना पड़ेगा. See, this is not actual. There's no actual cow like this. It's symbolic again. Here he's using the symbolism of Kamdhenu. He's saying Yajna is the Kamadhenu. Means when you perform action in the spirit of Yajna, and what we've talked about, in this attitude of collaboration, in the spirit of gratitude, in the spirit of renunciation, that is your Kamdhenu. Almost paradoxical. It will fulfill all your desires. And he says this. He says in verse number 12, the gods nourished by sacrifice will give you the desired enjoyments. The gods nourished by sacrifice, nourished by your yajna, will give you the desired enjoyments. Means if you perform action in the spirit of renunciation, almost paradoxically, you're removing your egocentric desire and performing action, but paradoxically, you will get more than what you had imagined. You'll get more than what you have wanted. Long and short of it is, what I was trying to drive home is, the secret to happiness, the secret to enjoyment is not simply chasing what you want, but shifting the way in which you perform action. When you inculcate the spirit of renunciation, the spirit of objectivity, this yagya bhav, you'll get more than what you had imagined. But for that, you'll have to take the plunge first. Huh? You'll have to take the plunge first. Become unselfish, the world will take care of you. Become unselfish, the world will take care of you. Most of us are afraid, Mera kya hoga? Mera kya hoga? What will happen to me? Will I be taken care of? That fear stops us from being unselfish. But the paradox is, become unselfish, and the world will take care of you. And it's remarkable how it works. For that, you have to take the plunge first. So, in conclusion, the idea of spiritual growth, the path of karma, is shifting your motive from selfish to unselfish, ultimately to selfless, becoming like the sun, becoming like the nature you see around you, which is simply expressing its nature, which is simply expressing what it ought to do. No hang ups. He says in the same chapter, in chapter 3, he says in verse number uh, 16, one who does not follow this wheel set in motion, this wheel of yajna, one who does not follow the wheel set in motion lives in vain. If you don't get into the cycle of yajna, you won't experience the true joys of life. You might experience wealth, you might experience success, name, fame, you might experience gratification, but the deepest joys of unselfish living, selfless living. Hanta hanta, hanta hanta. So that was chapter 5, exigency of action. Yes, Rashiji, you have a question. Did Prachi have a question also earlier? Okay, yeah, Rashiji.
So, sir, I just am a little confused with the concept of sacrifice in the yajna. So, the sacrifice here, when we talk about in yajna, is the ego that we let go of.
So there are two ways in which we use the word sacrifice. First of all, is in the concept of an ideal. An ideal is a goal you work for.
Okay. So, sacrifice here
So
means
you're sacrificing your own self-interest, just your own self-interest, um, or you're sacrificing your efforts and your time for a larger goal. Hmm? So, but again, another misconception people have is, oh, the goal should be separate from you. No, you could be a part of that. You could be included in that. It doesn't mean not taking care of yourself. It doesn't mean ignoring yourself, but rather expanding your horizons. Hmm? So, the word sacrifice in that sense means a larger spectrum that you're looking out for, that you're watching out for, a larger vision that you have. Hmm? Expanding the peripheries of your visions in life. See, when we use the word sacrifice, we don't mean you have to give up what you have. We don't mean you have to change your course of action. The spirit of yajna, the spirit of sacrifice, can be exercised in raising your child. You're raising a child. What kind of values are you inculcating in it? If you're inculcating values, first of all, what kind of values you have yourself? What kind of values do you have yourself? Doesn't mean you have to set up a big charitable organization, but if you're inculcating values of a charitable disposition, if you're inculcating values of service, it has a trickle effect. What kind of citizen are you creating for the country? So sitting in your home, working on your own values and the values of your child, you're doing service to the nation. It's sacrifice. So it matters not so much in terms of the outer action. That automatically happens, but it starts with the inner intention. It's a shift in approach. The world owes me versus I owe the world. Everybody is here to cater to me versus I am here to play my part. When that shift in attitude comes about, automatically it goes from seeking gratification to performing sacrifice. Right? So now you get a concept of that word sacrifice. Sacrifice doesn't mean giving up, huh? And being sad in life. Most of us want to stay away from spirituality because it means, oh, I have to get rid of everything that I have, or he's going to ask me to stop doing what I love. No. It's your kamadhenu. This yajna, this sacrifice is your kamadhenu. You'll be in cloud 9. See, think about it, and this is how nature works. If you, for you, in order for you to serve others, see, nature is very smart. It finds the best way possible. If it finds in you a candidate that is serving a larger pool, automatically it will find ways to take care of you so that you can serve. See, if you have an important employee in your organization, huh? If you have an important employee, what you'll take care of him. Arey, usko disturb mat karo. What does he need? Make sure it is already there. Huh? See, when if you're a beginning employee in the organization, you have to fight with the management. I want my work from home reimbursement. This is common HR things, we come across. 1,000 rupees work from home reimbursement, 1,000 rupees conveyance reimbursement. This is for someone who maybe at an executive level, but someone who's already at a a sales manager level, someone who's managing a lot of business, the organization will close their eyes and give, hey, don't ask any questions, don't ask for bills, 10,000 rupees automatic reimbursement. See, someone who works for me, they shared with me what they love about. There'll be a problem in the internet. 1 second. Because the light is gone. Are you able to see me? Okay, great. If you're not able to see me, then if you'll stop moving, then I'll know that.
No, we
okay.
can see you.
See, one of my colleagues. So he once shared with me. I was like, what makes you stick with our organization? He says, you all don't haggle about the little stuff. You don't haggle about the little stuff. You don't ask for, give me the hisab for these 5,000 rupees. It's so when someone is doing something important for you, you'll not bother about the little stuff. So similarly, when you have a yajna bhav, when you have a higher goal that you're wanting to serve, you're wanting to contribute to society, you're wanting to contribute to your nation, where your meals will come from, who where whether you'll have enough money for your rent and your basic livelihood, it will be taken care of. See, someone who is Narendra Modi doesn't have to book his flights. I'm using an extreme example. Narendra Modi doesn't have to bother about booking his flights. He has someone to do it for him. He doesn't have to bother about his what's going to be cooked for the next meal. It's all taken care of. The example I'm trying to convey is, the concept I'm trying to convey is, you pick up a higher goal to sacrifice for everything else that you need in order to do that will be taken care of. That's the way nature functions. But to get to that level, you have to take the first plunge. You are the one who has to have that spirit of sacrifice. Your well-being is a consequence. But we want an insurance. Make sure first I get the well-being, then only I will sacrifice. That's not possible. Then you haven't understood the grandeur of nature. Then you haven't understood the potency and the beauty of sacrifice. So now you get an idea of the word sacrifice.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. So exigency of action. There's a lot packed into it. I would urge you to, I'm purposely not rushing ahead because I know the bulk of what we have covered in just 4 classes, and a lot has been talked about, but we have to dwell on it a little more. So take the time to read through this chapter again and come back to me with questions. We'll move on. Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is called The Strength of Emotion. And quite aptly, it's called the strength of emotion because he's trying to again convey a point out here. Most people regard, just as they regard inaction as an aspect of spirituality, they regard emotions as a weakness in spirituality. अगर आप बहुत भावुक हो तो मतलब आप इस मार्ग में नहीं हो सकते. And having emotions is almost seen or assumed to be a weakness. Nothing can be further from the truth. The idea of Vedanta is not to rid you of your emotions or to not make you have feelings for your loved ones. In fact, it serves to purify the emotion. Turn your emotion from personal to impersonal. Turn your affection from attachment to pure love. So first and foremost, and having removed that misconception, he goes on to talk about a various set of emotions. I'm showing you this page because this is the contents page, but you'll see the themes that are coming up. Having talked about the misconception, he goes on to talk about various individual emotions. He'll talk about love, he'll talk about kindness, he'll talk about pity, he'll talk about charity. Each of these important emotions that we dabble with each and every day, and he's going to break it up. He's going to dig deeper to try and understand the intricacies. Thereafter, he's going to talk about from a very practical point of view, how it's important how you manifest the emotion. You must feel the emotion, but you must manifest it intelligently. Not everyone is capable of receiving your emotion. So the idea of Vedanta is not only to purify, first of all, is to purify your emotion, and thereafter for you to gain that control to be able to manifest it. Someone who is going through a difficult period, everybody around them are losing their heads, are crying and wailing, and this person is standing like a rock. It doesn't mean they don't have emotion. It just means that they understand that there's a time and place to manifest it. First of all, it's important to manifest emotion, but where, when, with whom? And thereafter he talks on again to understand it from very fundamental perspective. What is the root of emotion? Where does it come from? And how can it be used as a tool? Just as action can be used as a tool in your spiritual growth, how can your emotions be used as a tool for your emotional growth, for your spiritual growth to ultimately reach spiritual perfection? So this is going to be the chapter we discuss in the coming classes. I'm not going to, perhaps let's just start with the first section where he talks about this misconception. Did you have a question, Prachi? Again, your hand was up. Yeah.
We'll ask it at the end of classes. All right.
Great. We'll quickly cover perhaps just this first section.
Chapter 6, Strength of Emotion. Emotion and Intellection. The philosophy of Vedanta is profound It eludes the grasp of the common person. Its true spirit has been lost. Time and again, critics raise an objection to Vedanta. They believe it inculcates callousness, that it has little regard for human relation, destroys humane feeling, makes one indifferent, irresponsible towards the affairs of the world. The criticism is baseless, untenable. Ironically, Vedanta engenders chaste feelings. It only changes the quality of feeling from sensual to sublime, transforms the character of emotion from personal to impersonal, selfish to unselfish, preferential to universal, converts the frail form of emotion into a pillar of strength. In fact, the transformation is brought about by the clarity of thought that it develops. Thus, does Vedanta rehabilitate, regenerate humanity with human nature, yet its great blessing is misconstrued and denied to the human race.
This misconception has its reasons, and I think it's primarily because of two reasons. First of all, those with grosser emotion cannot understand subtler emotion. Those who are, and I don't mean as a criticism, those who are more selfish cannot understand unselfish. So someone with an unselfish emotion, um, performing something which to a selfish person may seem, oh, they're not looking out for me. I don't know why, but growing up, always this example comes to my mind. You've seen the movie Border? You've seen the movie Border? Sunny Deol.
या संदेश से आते हैं
And growing up, I loved that movie. I don't know why. Something I used to watch it like, I think I've seen it like 10 times, maybe more. And in that, Akshay Khanna, one of his first movies, I think. And this fellow was recently married. And then he was called into, was it Akshay Khanna recently married? One of the actors was recently married, and he had to come into
Sunil Shetty, I think.
and this is a beautiful example, because when I use the word selfish or unselfish, I don't mean it as a criticism, right? The difficulty that the wife has to go through, that the husband is leaving, for a place from where they perhaps won't be able to come back, and ultimately he loses his life in the war, but his emotion transcended merely his family. His emotion was for the country. So whenever I think of this example of comparison between a smaller circle versus a larger circle, this movie comes to my mind, because they show the when he's dying in the battlefield, and the wife can feel it back home, the difficulty. Vedanta inculcates in you a higher emotion, an impersonal emotion. But that impersonal emotion may not always be understood by someone who is at a grosser state. That's the first reason why I think people have a sense that Vedanta doesn't look at human emotions. It destroys humane feeling, because someone who is living unselfishly is often misunderstood. Their motives are often misunderstood. Feels like they're not, and it's difficult to convey that unselfish feeling. It's difficult to convey that higher ideal. Secondly, a lot of people look for shortcuts through spirituality. On the other extreme, a lot of people look for shortcuts to spirituality. They think that getting away from the world and going into solitude. They're doing something very spiritual. So they leave their sense of responsibility. They, um, as they say, naya naya mulla namaz bahut padhta hai, right? So one who becomes very enthused initially, a tendency is to jump into asceticism, a tendency is to jump into quote unquote sannyas when it's not the time for you, right? So abusing the concept of sannyas, which is also has been a part of this the history of this culture, that is brought about. Oh, this knowledge takes people away from their immediate responsibilities, but it's not the problem with the knowledge, it's the problem with people thinking that they can fast track, you know um, and putting the importance on an outward presentation of spirituality rather than being truly spiritual. But at no point does Vedanta ever, at least in no text that I have come across, says leave your home and everything and go into the forest. At no point does it say that. There comes a time and a space, it's called vanaprastha. It's a state of mind when you are ready to live in the vana, in the solitude of the forest, symbolically. But it never says that but these are the reasons why people perhaps over a period of time have developed this misconception about Vedanta. It's baseless. If you get into the depth of the philosophy, it talks about turning emotion into a pillar of strength. Can you use your emotion to do good rather than become a victim of the circumstances of the world? Today, our emotions make us weak. Generally, the rare person is able to cultivate emotion to as a pillar of strength. Usually, our emotions are at a state where we become victims of changing circumstances. If things we love and enjoy are taken away from us, it causes a lot of pain, uh, because that's the extent to which our emotions are permeating. So, how do you convert the frail form of emotion into a pillar of strength? That's going to be the point of discussion for the first part of this chapter. Okay, with that thought, we'll conclude today. I'm not going to you know, go too deep into this topic today. We'll start this on Wednesday. So let's stop here. I'm happy to take up any questions, starting with Prachi or Ankit. Yeah, yes.
Yes. Right now, we were speaking on sacrifice, and you said, we don't have to give up everything. But where do you draw the line on wanting things as well? Like, you might be doing things selflessly, but you're still operating in the world, and you need objects and services to participate in the world as well. So, where do you draw the line between, okay, there's something which I actually need, and there's something which, I think I need?
Don't worry about what you want. First of all, there's nothing wrong in wanting. Anybody who's announcing I don't want, दाल में कुछ काला है, दाल में कुछ काला है. You don't have to necessarily diminish in any way what you want. Rather, focus on cultivating unselfishness. When I say that, this concept of kamadhenu, if you develop unselfishness, you'll be given more than you could have imagined that you want or need or anything. So work on building that conviction, and it plays out over a period of time. You'll see it. When you develop a sense of purpose, people will want to serve you. When you change that attitude in business, when you take care of your people will earn money for you. That's the example of a successful business. And with that money that they earn for you, get what you want. Right? I'm just translating this concept. So, the idea is not to, somehow repress or suppress or morally limit what you want. It's about understanding that when you work in a spirit of service to a larger circle, when you develop that attitude of service in your work, it serves as a kamadhenu. It gives you what you want, what you could have ever wanted, right? As you grow in this process, automatically you'll understand the futility of things. Over a period of time, with experience, you'll understand you actually don't, what you thought you wanted, you actually didn't really need it. That's a separate contemplation, which, and the reason I'm saying this is because people think that, oh, Vedanta is going to make me think about not wanting, all these things. No, absolutely not. It doesn't start at that point. But at some point, yes, it's worth thinking about that, what your mind is playing games with you. Your desires are like, I mean, the objects of the world are like the moon. The objects of the world are like the moon. From far, it looks so pretty, so beautiful. Your wife wants you to bring the moon for her. So then you go towards the moon to bring it for your wife. And what do you see? You reach near the moon. It's full of craters. It's deserted. It's barren. So objects of the world are like that. From far, they seem very enticing. They draw you to, they make you go to great lengths to go and achieve them. But the more you begin to experience it, you understand you exaggerated the kick. Huh? You exaggerated the kick. That's an understanding, and with that understanding, automatically your desire for more objects, your desire for more things will taper down. You can't force it. That's a wisdom you have to. I mean, you've come to this current state with a certain set of wisdom. You employ that, and over a period of time, you'll also gain a deeper wisdom. So that control for um, things will happen naturally as you cultivate these spiritual values. Another word of caution that Vedanta throws is that, um, yes, you may want, but to control that want is in your own interest to get what you want. Because if your want turns into greed, if your want turns into a frantic desire for aggrandizement, you hurt your own interests. Chances are you won't be able to, even if you achieve something, you won't be able to sustain it. So we're not necessarily asking you to eliminate what you want, but also pay attention to, not letting it swell into greed, not letting it swell into um, desire per se. If regulated, controlled, given the right direction, will lead to spiritual progress. That's swadharma, right? But desire uncontrolled is like the devil. So what you want, if you let it take over your personality, if you let it dominate your personality. So these are different facets. These are different facets to, what you want. You don't necessarily have to. It's nothing wrong. There's nothing morally wrong in having desires. Everybody has desires. Everybody wants enjoy the good life, right? But the first step is to, you have to do two things. The first step is to control, regulate, moderate that desire, because it works against you if you don't. And second thing is focus on cultivating unselfishness, not necessarily on denying yourself what you want, but understanding that when you put yourself out there for a larger cause, whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you could have imagined will be taken care of. See, think about an industrialist. He's not perfect. An industrialist is not perfect, right? I'm not saying he's a manifestation of a perfect person. I'm sure he has a lot of selfish desires. But what has an industrialist done? He's put up the um, idea of a nation, building a nation through his industry at the helm. When that becomes perhaps one of the motivating thoughts, and when he contributes to the well-being of a nation through development in his industry, he earns in 10 figures, right? Now, the same industrialist, if he becomes too crooked, that will spell his downfall, greed, right? If over a period of time wisdom settles in that person, they'll become selfless. So it's all about regulating, moderating your own desire for what you want, and understanding that true success, bliss, and whatever you could have imagined will be given to you. That Kamadhenu, that spirit will come when you take the initiative to become unselfish. Does that answer your question?
I have some follow-up thoughts. So, for example, you spoke about industrialists right now, and I was reading an interview of Deepak Parekh, who was the chairman of HDFC and HDFC Bank, and he's someone who doesn't really have too much of equity in the company. And someone asked him, you've built these great companies, you've built up HDFC Bank, but you haven't really reaped the rewards of it. And he said something to the tune of, I worked with the mindset of a salaried person, but I built the company with the mindset of a entrepreneur. And even if I had equity, I've had enough to, educate my children, give them the best in the world and all of that. And if I had any more money, what good would have done me apart from, being able to buy more objects? So I didn't really do it for that. So, I mean, there's that motive. And then, there are industrialists who have equity and who do great things through their companies, but then they do engage in the acquisition of objects as well. So, there's that perspective on, where do you draw the line between, what are things which you think you want and which you actually want. I mean, not everyone can be a Deepak Parekh, and that's not how our society is set up as well. We have to be, like you said today, firstly incentivized, and only then later you'll have initiative take course.
So, I mean, I salute Deepak Parekh. I don't know. I've not read this interview, nor do I know much about him. But just because Deepak Parekh has done that doesn't mean that, again, as we say, this is not a moral science. There's a beautiful saying by Swami Ramatirtha, which is encapsulated in what Deepak Parekh said, that I'll just buy more objects. Swami Ramatirtha says, iron and gold are good for buying iron and gold. That's all. Iron and gold are good for buying iron and gold. When you understand that to enjoy something subtler, you need the subtler, then you won't worry about the quantum of wealth. Yes, whatever you need for, I'm sure Deepak Parekh has enough to take care of 2-3 generations. At some point, you have to say, okay, that's it. Now, that can come after you do 20,000 crores, that can come after you do 2,000 crores, that can come after you do 200 crores, that can come after you do 20 crores, that can come after even your Sudama. You have nothing. So there's no one right action. There's no one right action. What matters is the attitude. And see, again, Khalil Gibran says in his poem on giving, he says, what is fear of need but need itself? What is fear of need but need itself? You have the fear that, okay, you might need something tomorrow, oh, let me hold on to my equity because I might need it tomorrow. It's need. It's need itself. So where you are uh, in your material financial status, nobody's to say it's a right feeling or a wrong feeling. What you want and what you think you need, we're not going to try to. It's not the quantum of your possession that makes you spiritual or not spiritual. It's not the quantum of your possession. What we have to gradually, slowly work towards is a spirit of detachment from our possessions, not a spirit of dispossession from our possessions. Some person may achieve that dispassion after having built a empire of 20,000 crores. Some people may have built that dispassion, say at the stage of Deepak Parekh, where he's content with, a good salary, and, I'm sure he's got very good salary over many years.
Yeah.
Some people might be content without, unknown, unseen, barely anything. So at what stage that detachment or dispossession comes might be different for different people, right? But what you have to focus on is building that dispossession, that detachment, dispossessiveness, that detachment, and you have to go at your own pace, at your own level. So this theme of becoming unselfish, it doesn't, you don't have to deny yourself of what you want. Rather, you have to focus on, through what you get, that prasad bhav, right? Through what you get, become a trustee of that. Whatever you've been blessed with, whatever wealth you have earned through your own actions or by, through your family wealth or whatever, do it, use it for good, become a trustee of it, make sure it is preserved and used for loka sangraha, the word he uses in the scripture, loka sangraha, well-being of one and all. There'll come a time, beyond Deepak Parekh, that thing that Deepak Parekh spoke about was, on the road from Grihastha to Vanaprastha. There comes a time, Vanaprastha, it's a mental state where you're happy to walk away from it all. You don't need it. When that state comes, is different for different people. But if you walk this journey, you'll come to that state. Does that answer your question?
It answers my question. I have some follow-up thoughts as well, but yeah, I'll let other people ask questions. Maybe I'll save them for next time.
Any further questions, or should we continue? Go ahead, ask your question or thoughts, whatever you want to share.
Yes, so you spoke about, realizing the futility of objects. As the moon draws nearer to you, you see that it's full of craters. And okay, so maybe you see the futility in certain things, but people around you, and if you think of yourself in the role of, a caregiver for everyone around you as well, your family, they might not see the futility in certain things. So that sometimes creates a dilemma as well. Like, okay, is this actually, like, you can't really control someone or force someone to think that, okay, this might be futile. Like you said, for everyone, it's a different stage. What might be futile for one might be completely fine for the other. So there's that conflict which sometimes gets created, like, okay,
See,
how much do I...
It's a very pertinent question. I think what you're asking is a very pertinent question, because most people, when they are in a certain elevated state, they expect others to also be in that elevated state, where they have a certain perspective of, and it's very important to understand that everybody is at their own level. Everybody has their own needs, right? So whatever is the basic common minimum that everyone will need, not only basic, comfortable minimum that everyone will need. Say for example, as Mr. Deepak Parekh, right? Maybe he has developed this idea, okay, I have enough for my family, kids, maybe for 2 generations, right? Just because he may not even need that much, he may be happy with 1/10 of it, right? But what is that amount? You have to determine very practically. What is the level of your family? What is the level of the kind of world you enjoy, and what kind of environment you want to, give your dependents, those who are, around you and who you have a responsibility for. That's that's a decision you have to come to yourself, right? The idea is that it shouldn't become a samsar, right? But having said that, again, the idea is not to deny or diminish what you possess, for others. Rather, um, I mean, your thoughts, your ideas, your values are influencing others at all times, right? So, are you looking out for the shreya or the preya? There are two ways in which you can serve others, help others. You can give what is preya, what is satisfying to them, what is gratifying to them, what is enjoyable to them, preya, right? Or what is shreya, what is good for them, what is going to be beneficial for them, what is going to help them. Hmm? So sometimes feeding the ego of someone, it's preya, it makes them feel good. Does it do good for them? Giving someone 1 lakh rupees, huh? A rich parent gives their child 1 lakh rupees. You can question that. There's no fixed quantum, depending on who your child is. You have to have that uh, that awareness of, am I simply looking to gratify them? You said, right, they have a set of needs, they might see value in, the moon, right? Am I simply gratifying them, or am I also looking out for what will um, be in their interest in the longer term, what will make them a better person, what will help them as a human being, right? And it's a careful balance, because if prayer is not taken care of, then shreya becomes difficult. Meaning, if someone is not reasonably gratified, huh, or feels that they're not gratified, then they don't care about shreya. Hmm? So yes, take care of, cater to someone's whims and fancies and needs and whatever, to a certain extent, but don't be completely lost in that. You are, as a guardian to someone else, as a contributor to someone else's life, you have far more to give them than just material comforts and gratifications, right? What kind of values you're cultivating in them to make them a better person, so that ultimately they also see the moon for what it is, right? Not that doesn't mean to thrust it upon them. Look, the moon has craters in it. Don't you see it? An adult cannot. Uh, you can talk. You can't talk to. You have to talk to the child in the child's language, right? Which is why teaching is such a delicate process, right? You have to meet the person at their level. You have to be. See, a sannyasi can always say, "इसमें दुनिया में क्या है यार, छोड़ो." But a sannyasi has to talk to a grihastha at the level of a grihastha. The idea of growth in general is that it should be from a place of comfort, but slightly uncomfortable. If it's too uncomfortable, if you push someone too much, if you deny them, what they need at their level, then they move away from that. They reject that. They deny that. Right? So, um, first of all, just because you see the moon and see the craters in it, it's as you rightly said, it's not necessary the others also see creators in it. Don't lecture them. Don't lecture them. No need to lecture them. Right? That doesn't. That's one extreme. The other extreme is bringing the moon for them, showering them with it all the time. There's no need for the other extreme also. Have a balanced approach. Take care of a certain level of needs, whims, enjoyments. Let them be blissed out in that sense. But at the same time, intelligently try to insert learnings. Because ultimately, what will help them in the longer run is not constantly gratifying themselves through enjoyments, but with a spiritual vision, a higher value, right? So there's a delicate balance. Unfortunately, there's no clear answer of what to do. There's no sada straightforward answer. It's very contextual. It depends on the context. It depends on the person who you're dealing with. It depends on what they've experienced. It depends on their own vasanas. It depends on their own emotional state. Right? But these are the fundamental principles that you have to follow. Further thoughts? Thank you for that. I think that was very helpful. Thank you for sharing your queries and thoughts. We'll take up further questions. Or do you have anything else? Rashiji, you have a question? Okay. I assume that people turn on the camera when they have to ask a question.
No.
Okay. So with that thought, we'll conclude today's class and we'll continue on Wednesday with the strength of emotion. Hari Om.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Hari Om.